Welcome back to On the Horizon podcast, hosted by Jessie Sage and Melrose Michaels. First, thank you so much for becoming a premium subscriber and supporting our podcast. This is getting you extra exclusive, unheard, and unseen footage from each interview that we have on the horizon. Chris Sardina is the director of national sex worker rights organization Desiree Alliance. She holds a bachelor's degree in women's studies, U.S. history, and a master's in social justice. I have a question and I've never said this publicly, but it is on my radar with SexWorks CO to eventually have our own XBiz style kind of convention for networking and business to come together under the online and digital creators. Is that something potentially Desiree can participate in and then maybe offer more shielding, because they can't just come in and assume when a lot of us are digital creators who do have resources to combat being arrested unfairly and things like that. Would that be of use or of value?
Well, FOSTA SESTA is an online law. I mean, it's bleeding out. Yeah. You see where it bleeds out. I mean, that would somehow, money's bleeding out. They're raiding massage parlors. Yeah. They're doing street sweeps like they always do before big events, to clean the streets up. But the FOSTA SESTA is online. It's an online law, so they can, and it's so broadly written that it can be interpreted so many different ways. To me, it's the new Technical Patriot Act. The U.S. is trying to, grab control of the WWW. Good luck with that, because it's so vast and so wide. But it's just another tactical Patriot Act where the U.S. is going to, you're either with us or against us, or you're going to be put on the dreaded tier list of not fighting trafficking. You must be for trafficking. So therefore, we're not going to give you any money. Your loans are due tomorrow, or, we're not going to give you any military resources, or, it's just another tactical way for the U.S. to control fucking everything. Call me paranoid, but I see it. I've seen it happen, and I'm seeing it happen. Right. Now we've got online laws where here comes the U.S. You don't see, and you're either with us or against us. You want to, fight this trafficking that doesn't exist in the United States. Of course, trafficking exists. You have a capital economy, you're going to have an underground economy to go right with that. That's just the way it goes. But it's you're gonna find that. But if the U.S. starts controlling it now we've got FOSTA SESTA, the Earn It Act, and this act, and the Banking Act, and these laws are just stacked upon stacked upon stacked. Well, we already have laws. We have the TV RPA, TURVA is what I call it. I don't know. But so, we already have these laws in place. We have the Palermo Protocol, which, deals with children and things like that by the United Nations. So we already have these global and national laws in place that protect people from trafficking. But if you look at the hysteria that is going around about traffic, it's a new domestic, well, it's not a new domestic war. Trafficking, you go back to the Mann Act and, and the White Slavery Act and all that bullshit. But, it's just a way, it's race baited, it's, racist and patriarchal. We're infantilized, we don't know our own minds. We must be, if we're working by choice, well, you just don't know it, you're trafficked, because that's what you hear a lot. You just don't know it. These poor women, and it's always women and children. It's never boys or men. It's, just what about the women and children? So we get this hysteria, as the drug war wanes down with the legalization of marijuana, even though they're still trying to keep it alive. The last 60 years, the drug war has done a lot has done a lot for the U.S. prison system.
Yeah.
So, now we've got, we're ramping up this hysteria of trafficking. Mm-hmm. So if Aunt Betty in Vermont, who's sitting in her fucking lazy boy, sees something about trafficking in her small town, under every rock, behind every tree, they're lurking behind the building, ready to snatch up your children. Mm-hmm. I mean, that Aunt Betty's scared. She is scared to death because she doesn't go any further than just what she hears. I've been writing and talking about trafficking for years. So, I'm considered an expert of exactly what makes trafficking happen in the first place. And if you go with a capital economy, there you go. There's your underground economy. And being from Arizona, being so close to the border, we've cherry picked out sex trafficking, where if you go across the border, you're traveling from, thousands of miles. I mean, you're going, all the way to South America, or go across the seas to come in through Mexico. Mm-hmm. You get your human trafficking, you get your labor trafficking, and you get your sex trafficking all in one.
Yeah.
So, just to cherry pick out sex.
Right.
Because if we pick out labor and start screaming labor, labor, who's going to cut your fucking grass? Who's going to take care of your children? Who's going to dust your furniture?
I'm from San Diego, so it's the same issue. I mean, I don't live there now, but I grew up in San Diego, and it's the same. And all of the border cities,
it's the same.
Yeah, they're run on that labor.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen that movie, A Day Without a Mexican? It's awesome. It's about the whole system just shutting down. All the Mexicans disappear, and clothing, laundry piles up, fruit rots,
Yeah, I don't actually know. I don't think that people who live in San Diego, white people who live in San Diego, I don't think that they would know how to function without the laborers that are there.
Yeah.
And anywhere, as I'm in Arkansas right now, and it's really strange to see. You wouldn't think there would be any Mexicans, but every one of our, I live in an apartment building, our groundskeepers are all Mexican. Any type of contracted out labor that you don't, is filled with people that are immigrants and migrants to this country. Yeah. So you see that everywhere.
Yeah.
And so when you, if you pick out labor, well, God forbid, then people would have to be held accountable.
Yeah.
But sex, since we look at sex, so and if it's human trafficking, then it must be your own fault because you shouldn't have fucking came here in the first place, and that's our mindset on how we look at that. So sex trafficking, the women and children are getting, raped and sold by the hundreds of thousands. These numbers are just so outrageous. I mean, Norma Jean Almodovar says, you would literally have to import men from a different planet to actually, justify these numbers.
Yeah.
Because there's not enough men in the world. If every man was a sex trafficker, we would have to import them from a different planet. So because the way, even our own DOJ, hundreds of thousands every day at any given time. Well, what the fuck does that even mean at any given time?
Right.
I mean, does that mean yesterday, today, tomorrow? I mean, at any given time, I'm looking over my shoulder because I'm going to be snatched up in IKEA or Walmart in the parking lot, or by a white van, or, Wayfair in a box with a barcode. And oh my God. So I do a lot of, refuting these numbers. So I've gotten death threats and, well, you must be you're a trafficker, you're a sex trafficker, and then try to dox me and try to dox our board members. And, I had one lady, because I told her to go fuck herself or something. And all of a sudden she goes, well, I'm going to write, HR. Well, guess who HR is? Hello.
That's so great. Oh my God.
Dena Stanley is the CEO and founder of Trans Uniting, a mutual aid nonprofit providing resources to Pittsburgh's trans community. Dena is a prominent social justice warrior amongst the Black trans community. Trans Uniting is a trans, non-binary, and gender-expansive organization working to better our community's lives here in Pittsburgh. For me, like the way that I learned how to be safe, how to do like all of the things that I need to do has been like through online communities. So like for folks who like don't have that same access to that, like you said, you're like boots on the ground. Like, what are the networks look like for people who are like street-based workers or who aren't like necessarily in online spaces?
Right. A lot of it we in the ballroom community. So I don't know if you guys have ever watched like Legendary or Pose or anything like that. But I'm heavy into that scene. So a lot of the sex workers come into the ballroom community.
That's so interesting.
And and outside of that, it's just, a lot of folks in the community know me, and they know what I did. Most of, like all of us do a lot of things. So they always, they just find a way to get to me somehow and to get that information.
That's interesting because when you speak in the ballroom community, we were interviewing some other guests earlier, and they had the same kind of experience with their work with burlesque. Was that a lot of sex workers came through that community and were like, didn't have a space to like be what they were. And then they entered burlesque, and that kind of served as that space temporarily for them.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's like when you get into larger spaces that, are safe spaces for us, that's when we congregate and we're able to disseminate that good information.
I wonder, do you think that with the organizing you've done that, because your experience is like you came from a place where there were no, safety nets, there was no community for you. And now that there's a little bit of that established and it's making some change and being effective. Do you think that the fact that other sex workers coming up now, having that experience of like a community to rely on or depend on or seek education from will inspire them to continue and grow and foster more community? Because I always wonder if like that's something that sets a chain effect or like momentum that catapults into better things, or if it's just like, taken for granted.
So I would say in different intersectionalities of sex working, yes. When we're talking about like Black trans women who are sex working, a lot of times there's so much mental instability there, because of everything that we have to endure. They start self-medicating. So when you start self-medicating, it turns into a whole nother situation. So you're not able to advocate a lot of times because you're in that situation. And sometimes you don't make it out. But when they do, they may come back and help. They may not, you know what I mean? Because a lot of times when you start getting into those addictions, fight that for a very long time. I would definitely say in different intersectionalities of sex working, yes. But when you start getting down to the Black trans folks, it gets crazy.
I mean, this like a question that I have as I'm listening to you say that though, for you is like, what keeps you hopeful and what keeps you working and what keeps you like fighting
Inspired,
the fight?
Yeah.
Just the fact that keeping my people safe, keeping them educated. Somebody has to do that. Somebody has to have some type of clear mind, even though I'm a little crazy myself. A little bit, but I still, I'm just here. Like, I was fortunate enough to be in situations, and come out of situations, because there was a lot of situations I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna get out of this. Well, wait, but I'm here. A lot of those situations. So, I don't know. I moved back, and this is the work that I said I'm going to do. I'm going to help my community, and I set out to do it, and that's what I've been doing. But I was doing it already. I've been doing it. I've been helping my community since I was a kid, not knowing that's, that's what I was doing. I was still, doing all of the things I'm doing now, just in a different capacity.
We hope you enjoyed this bonus footage from this episode of On the Horizon, and we look forward to having you tune in next time.